Hello, I'm Tony, and today we are looking at Aground, a game currently free from Prime Gaming until January 24th, 2024. Amazon says this is an RPG, but I don't think it is. Not in a proper sense of the words. It's basically a 2D 8-bit Stardew Valley, minus the social heart collecting romantic part. Actually, there's a few things here that have been removed or simplified, so let's get into it. I want to talk about the graphics first, because I always do, but also because they might put some people off, because they are full on 8-bit, blocky, indistinct, flat graphics. For example, character faces are just a surface with 2 dots for eyes. It's not like you can really show off an art style. Attempts are made during cutscenes, which are not too bad. Just the simplicity of them really doesn't lend itself to that kind of expression, really, I don't think. To be fair, I completely forgot about the blockiness about 10 minutes into the game, because I was just involved in what I was doing, but it's not going to be to everyone's taste. The music isn't 8-bit, it's certainly nothing like the games that I used to play when I was a kid. They're well-made, simple, relatively simple tunes that switch as your environment changes. Now, Underground has a theme, so does Night, that kind of a thing. I enjoyed the tunes, most of them were decent. I mean, good enough for me to actually notice them, which, as I've mentioned before in other videos, is no mean feat. As I said earlier, this is a cut-down Stardew Valley. It's got its own mysterious story, which I found fairly intriguing, and I've played for about 8 hours, but I don't feel like I've progressed very far into the game at all. The story so far that I've seen is that I'm stranded, aground, on an island. I meet some people with really useful skills that they teach me, which is such a good result and a bit of a coincidence, really. I've discovered there's dragons, which is weird, which I did get to ride, which was great. The NPCs give me a series of quests that have me going out hunting and foraging, which as I complete them, gives me access to new buildings and new recipes for crafting. The quest system is basically how a game introduces its mechanics at the beginning, and it's pretty well done. It explains it well enough for me to get on with it, although I have played a few survival games, so the basic concepts of the mining, building and crafting did feel very familiar to me anyway. Gathering materials involves the usual chopping down trees, collecting food, killing animals for meat, and, differently in this one, digging down into the earth where you can walk freely underground. There's no platforming to worry about, there's no gravity here, you can just walk around. So you mine down, you can mine anywhere you like, it's all good. As in most of these games, the lower you go, the more monsters you see, but also the higher grade of tool you need to actually get through the earth. This feeds into the standard survival game cycle of make a tool to get some ore, to make an upgraded tool to get better ore. You also have crafting, as I said earlier, so you have 7 available slots to equip gear. You got 2 slots for weapons, you got 1 for your mining tool, 1 each for armour and headgear, a backpack space to increase your carry capacity, because what would a survival game be without having to leave valuable stuff behind because you can't carry anymore and you run out of stamina. Lastly, you've got a spot for a familiar who fights alongside you as long as you keep them fed. It's a very manageable number of items to deal with. Personally, I would probably like more when it comes to armour that I can craft. I find it satisfying in these games to improve my character's abilities via crafting. So only having 1 slot for armour is a bit of a disappointment. The tools and weapons, though, they really do make a difference. They do make your character feel more capable, if not, stronger. So it's only a minor gripe. Unlocking the new food and potion recipes is pretty satisfying though. Having more health and stamina food or potions really allowed me to fight and forage for a lot longer than I could before I had them. So it really speeds up your progress to be able to gather as much as possible for a longer period of time. The building portion is where the simplicity of the game feels too restrictive though. You do have a choice on the placement of your buildings, but it's a 2D game, so it's a pretty limited choice. The islands aren't that big, there's not that many places you can build in, so placement comes down to which trees and bushes do you want to sacrifice, rather than like a practical or aesthetic reason for building in a certain way. On top of this, the first 2 islands, which have been like most of my 8 hours of play, already have some buildings placed, and the new ones are made in conjunction with an NPC when you complete a quest, and you don't really have a lot of leeway in where to build, or what order to build them in. This means you're kind of stuck with a predetermined layout, which might not work that well when you want to build the latest and greatest stuff. You could break down all the current buildings, you have the option to dismantle them if you want, but you don't get the full material cost back. And since I'm not made of materials, I haven't done it and I just don't want to. Creating buildings outside a quest requires blueprints, which you can gain from NPCs, but sometimes you have to buy them from vendors. Vendors are gained fairly early on and they allow you to sell your materials or crafted items for gold, which lets you buy the same stuff you can mine or craft typically, but does give you access to items that you can't get yourself, at least not in the beginning. And some of these items are needed to progress the storyline, either build a structure or finish a quest. It's an essential part of the game. I did mention weapons earlier, so let's talk about the combat. I wasn't the biggest fan. At the beginning it feels like a battle of attrition until you get a shield, because you're basically just trading blows with monsters until one of you falls down and turns into meat. Using the shield to block does seem to give you an opening to fight back without being hit yourself, a little window of opportunity, but it's still a slog fighting. Ranged combat is better until you find enemies that have their own ranged attacks. Then it's a case of like dodging up and down, trying to avoid their projectiles as you fire yours, which is literally a hit and miss scenario. I did get used to fighting new opponents, figuring out tactics that work, but I still don't enjoy it. I could increase some of my fighting skills with the points I got as I've leveled up, which I guess must be the RPG element that Amazon are talking about. You've got 14 skills, although a wiki check tells me 2 more added later on. And they give you more health, more stamina, better gathering speeds, that kind of a thing. And combat boosts. It's the standard, each time you get a skill upgrade, the next upgrade on from that costs a little bit more. Your skill points are pretty limited, so you really do have to choose carefully. I haven't on my first playthrough, and I'll be honest, I'm relieved to discover that at some point later on in the game you can reset your skill points. You do have the option of multiple character save files, so you can experiment with one character and then get it right in the next one, but it doesn't sound like you have to. What you might need the other game slot for though is a multiplayer mode. I can't tell you how well it works because I've not used it, but it might be quite good to have friends along when you fight the bosses that are in the game. I haven't got to a boss yet, but I have done some dungeons, which were pretty tricky and good fun. I've really enjoyed this game so far. I'm 8 hours in, like I said, and I've not felt like I've had to grind materials too much. Just normal exploring and gathering what I felt like gathering has given me enough to progress the quest and storyline pretty well. It's kind of fun to find something new, wonder what it's for, and then find out that it's an important component in a cool new crafting recipe later on. I've travelled to 2 islands, and both have had their own sort of specific materials to collect. They've also added clues to this story, which is kind of weird and kind of interesting, and I do want to find out more. I'm intrigued. I do like survival games, and this does the important things right. The crafting, the feeling of exploration, the progress you get with the various different new recipes, new buildings, and I've still got so much more to discover in this game, which is great. If you enjoy survival games, I think you should give this one a try, even if you feel a bit put off by the graphics. It's a definite recommend from me. Okay, that's all for me for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.